For everyone who's new, this is a Be Your Own Therapist class, or not class, but a session with Venerable Robina Courtin, who's going to help us slowly unpack our minds. So
that's the plan, Alexis. Okay, people. So we think we're here just for this hour to do a little bit of talking, a bit of unpacking and unraveling and understanding of the mind, which is the bottom line. This is the job of being a Buddhist, actually. Sometimes it gets very confusing. We forget that, make it very complicated. Let's again try to make it easier. Okay, so it is easy. It's very simple. The concept is so simple that the job of being a Buddhist, when it comes down to it, is to distinguish between the neurotic, ridiculous, I-based, fear-based sources of your suffering, and we all know them, attachment, anger, and all the others, and between them and then the other ones, the positive ones. I mean, the concept is unbelievably simple. It's almost like it seems too simple. It seems like it can't be that simple. Well, the fact is it isn't simple. It's the hardest job we'll ever do, first because the Buddha's very interesting view of these deluded states of mind, that they go to unbelievably subtle levels. They're not one-dimensional. We can say the word anger, but there's levels and levels and levels, from the most gross, intense level to the most subtle level. And of course, it's like anything, any body of knowledge, you can't get it all in one go. You just got to start with the simple stuff and you just keep progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. That's it. So that's it, what happened there? So, and why would we do this? What's the reason? What's Buddha's reason for exhorting us to do this job? Is because the negative states of mind are why we suffer. So this too is so simple as a statement. It's embarrassing. It's almost like absurd. It can't be that easy. It is. But why is it difficult? It's because we're not used to doing it. Because we believe utterly in our own, and even our modern views of the mind reaffirm the opposite of what Buddha's saying. And we're addicted to this process. I mean, of course, Buddha would say it didn't start with our mother. We came into this life fully programmed with so much of that everything that's in our mind that we're expressing now, we came programmed with it from having thought and done and said these things before. So that also is why it makes it so much more hard. But to get like anything, you've got to start with the concept. You've got to start with the theory. You've got to start with the method, the recipe, and then you just work on it according to your capacity. That's the job. That's the essence of it, really. But it's difficult because, we're so preoccupied with the outside world, aren't we? When the smallest thing happens, what we mostly see and hear, and what we totally see, hear, taste, touch, and smell is the outside world. And that appears to be the main thing that causes the happiness and the main thing that causes the suffering. So it's, it's the hardest job we'll ever do. It's like reversing the energy of a bomb. That's how I like to think about it, It's the exact opposite of what we tend to do. But that's the job. And of course, the big part is our tragedy in our culture is that we wait until it's too late to look into the mind. When everything's seemingly going nicely, when just little baby things go wrong, we don't pay attention. We wait till your husband wants to kill you, or you want to kill him, or you lose your leg, or your husband leaves you, or your house burns down. Then the hard work starts. But because we haven't dealt with the baby events, the little tiny events that happen 1,000 times a day, is why it's so difficult when the bad things happen, because we wait till it's too late. I always use the analogy. It's like you've never heard of car mechanics. And this is a dumb analogy, but it's a really good one. It's as if you've never heard of the concept of mechanics. So you've got this lovely car that drives beautifully, and you just have no sense of impermanence. You have no sense that it's gradually going to wear down. You have no sense you've got to maintain the wheels and, the oil and the water, whatever you do with modern cars. You have no sense of it. And you wait until the wheels are falling off at 100 miles an hour on the freeway before you notice that something's wrong. That's our approach to life. And that's why we have so much suffering. That's why we kill ourselves. That's why we kill each other. That's why the world is so tormented. It's a tragedy. So even if we do have a wish to see the mind, let's say we even buy into Buddha's view, which is pretty astonishing, which is the vast majority of the world doesn't. But even if we do, we still leave it until it's too late, You wait until you're raging angry to notice that things haven't been going right for a long time. You wait until you can't get out of bed one morning, you're so depressed because you haven't noticed the baby events, the trigger, the events out there. You see, one way of putting it in Buddhist view is that whatever goes on out there, which is what we think now is the main cause of my suffering or the main cause of my happiness, we wait till that happens before we notice. And if we start to look at our mind, it's still almost enormously hard when somebody's abusing you and you hear these horrible words and you feel the pain of it. It's almost impossible to see, to know, to buy into the Buddha's view that the words aren't the main problem. It's your anger that's arising in response to the words. This seems almost cruel. But this is the logic that Buddha's telling us, and it's really hard to, we want to soften it. We want to say, well, no, it can't be that bad. Surely the words are playing some role. Well, yes, they are. It's a dependent arising. And it's wrong. The person shouldn't be abusing you. That's absolutely correct. Buddha agrees, But he's saying if we can really see that the mind is the problem, we know our mothers would tell us. It's like water off a duck's back. When you've got sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never harm you. I don't know if you learned that. This is straight from the mouth of the Buddha, but we don't believe it. It sounds like a joke. It sounds like a fairy story, doesn't it? So you don't even understand this intellectually. It takes a long time. And then to start to do it experientially takes even longer. But you've got to start somewhere. With any theory, you've got to start somewhere. E equals MC squared. You've got to start somewhere. And move towards it, That's it. That's the essence of it. As they say, it's nothing, as Buddha says, or whoever said it, I can't remember, Buddha, Shantideva, somebody, if you can change something, please, of course, change it. If you can get that person to stop abusing you, please get them to stop. It's very helpful. But the real point is, what if you can't? That's when the work starts, That's when the work starts, and this is what's hardest. This is the essence of it, and this is the essence of everything I ever say. It's almost like I'm boring. I feel embarrassed of saying the same thing all the time. So I think it's good if you ask questions. Come on, ask me some questions. This is the best part about this hour we have together. Your experiences. So ask me questions. Bring up things of daily life that bring in this. Ace, you know all the answers already, but you can still ask your question. Come on.
I have a question.
Ace has a question first. I know, but you know all the answers, Ace. So come on, ask your question, and I bet you can answer it yourself.
I just have another question. You said something really interesting. You say that low self-esteem and arrogance work together.
They're flip sides of the same coin. They're both, yeah, that's right, Ace. They're both rooted in this strong assumption of a very vivid, concrete I. So when we're overinflated, that's what arrogance is. And when we're underinflated, that's what low self-esteem is. And if we didn't have pride, we wouldn't have low self-esteem. It's quite shocking to hear it, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I have low self-esteem, and in other side, I have arrogance.
That's right. So you can see it. There's the relationship. You just pointed it out. So what's the question? There's no question. You understand it.
The question is, how can we be in balance?
You don't want to be in balance, Ace. You want to get rid of the low self-esteem altogether, and you want to get rid of the pride altogether. It's not a question of balance. It's a question of having a correct, this is the harder way to put it. It's having a valid sense of a self that isn't over-exaggerated. You see, all the delusions over-exaggerate. So the root delusion over-exaggerates this sense of me, and then the me craves to be praised, and then when we don't get the praise, we get upset. So they're the problem. So it's not a question of balance. It's a question more and more, as we've been talking, Ace, you understand it well, observing these responses to our events in life. And then as we observe the feeling response, which is the first level, we then start to unpack and unravel the thoughts, the thought that pride is saying, the thought that low self-esteem is saying, that each of which is exaggerating the status, your status. They're both exaggerations. When we get that point, then we know how to argue with these wrong assessments of ourselves. It's quite a subtle job, Ace, but this is the job every time. It's not a question of balance. It's a question of arguing with the misconceptions. arguing with both the arrogance that overstates your importance and argues with the low self-esteem that over-exaggerates your unimportance. So it's learning to listen to these conceptual stories and argue with them. That's the answer, Ace.
Thank you very much,
Good, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Excellent question, because we've all got these, and this is quite a shocking point. Let's talk about this one. I mean, we love to talk about, you know, not just Ace, but he's pointing out a thing we all understand very deeply, that we have this awful feeling of not being enough. And that's really also a function of attachment. We just have this belief, it's so deep in our being, that we're not enough. That's low self-esteem, or even as that's called self-hate, if it's really strong, you know. But it literally isn't true. This is the key thing that Buddhism and psychology is saying, that these delusions, these neuroses are literally liars. They're literally liars, you know. So anyway, go on. Who's there? Andrew. Talk to me, Andrew.
Hi. So coming off of that, a similar question about not being enough, I find myself in a situation with my boss where I'm constantly being fed her neuroses.
Yeah.
And it's so sticky. It's and my ego in my brain defends itself from it by chatting to myself about how illogical it is and how right I am, and I find myself arguing with her in my head over and over again. And I know that's my ego trying to be right, you know. And
so when you say you're over bombarded by her neuroses, what do you mean by that?
2:30 a.m. emails about how I'm not responding to her fast enough, and
oh my God, okay, I see you. Okay.
You know, like the emotion. She's very emotional. She has a good heart, and I know this, but her emotion, she's an external processor. Her emotions, she vomits them, and then she feels purged, but then it's all over me.
I understand, but okay, but then, now that's her job. That's her problem. Now, what's yours though? Because that's the point. She's got neuroses, and now, so what are yours that are being triggered by hers? That's the real question for you. So what? How are you? It's sort of like you're playing. This is for me a good analogy. You're playing tennis with somebody, and they're playing tennis all over the place. But you got to look at your tennis, because that's how you can defeat her tennis. Not keep looking at her tennis and wishing she would play better tennis. So what's your job? How would you look at what your problem is? What are you? How are you going to, in order to, you know, to navigate it and learn to have a good relationship so you can do your job better? I presume you want your job, you know. So what do you think you've got to look at inside you? This is the key point, Andrew.
I see. Well, I see in myself that for me, it's my ego needing to be right, meaning logically to prove that in this situation she's wrong and I'm right, and I have to let that go. And it takes a lot of work sometimes for me to do.
That's right, exactly. In other words, 2:30. I mean, you see the email in the morning, or you see it in 2:30.
Well, sometimes, you know, if I get up in the middle of the night, I have the compulsion to check my phone because my brain is trained to like, what's going on? What am I missing? And then I see it, and then anger arises immediately. How can you be doing this? This is so illogical. What's going on? Why would you do that? That's so unprofessional, blah, 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 blah. And then I spend the entire day hearing this lecture that I'm giving myself in my head, punishing myself with it.
Exactly.
And then I sit and I do my practice, and eventually it goes away. And then at the other side of it, I'm like, the whole day I'm arguing with myself. For her, it's over. I'm hanging on to it. You know?
Right. So this is a function of attachment. Attachment is like a dog that can't leave the bone alone, you know. And this is the point when we see another person's fault, we're probably correct, because we can observe it, we can see it, and we're quite accurate. And every word you say to yourself in this argument, you are right. But it's all kind of useless. It's exhausting yourself, isn't it? And this is part of the problem. I mean, it's really hard to control our thoughts, isn't it? But it's really hard to control our thoughts. And this is why we've got to be so humble with ourselves, knowing it's not going to go overnight. So this is where, I mean, I don't know if you do this, but I think most of us do. If you've got colleagues who also, that you're in, you know, that you kind of talk to about the boss, this is what keeps it all going. This is one of the most powerful things that maybe to stop to do, is to at least can shut the mouth. At least if you shut your mouth, you know, and don't say it to other people. This is, because I mean, we all do this. If in the family, at work, we always have our colleagues and we're all colluding together to look at mum, or look at the boss, or look at the colleague. This is the stuff that keeps the fire burning, and which makes it almost impossible to work on your mind. So at least if we can control the speech first, do you understand? That's already a powerful practice.
Could I just ask one more question about it? This has been going on for quite some time, and I've had some very serious talks with her where I've really had to lay into her and be like, it's completely too much. and she's corrected certain behaviors, some really grotesque ones, but it's these small ones that trigger my shempa, you know, they trigger my reactions. And I'm wondering, do I have to remove myself from this situation, or is it my job to do it?
Oh, no, Andrew, this is the thing. When it comes down to it, whether it's a relationship with your lover, whether it's your sister, or whether it's your boss, to be very brutal, and I've mentioned this often, when it really comes right down to it, Andrew, we have precisely two choices. You either look at a situation, and if you feel, you check your job, you check this environment, you check what you're doing, and you know what you know the environment. There's the boss here, there's this here, there's this there. So you check this job, and you have to make a decision. Is this job worth it? In other words, am I learning something in this job? I mean, because if you can use her as practice, if you're playing tennis with a crazy tennis player, if you're brave enough, it's really good practice for you to learn humility, to learn patience, to learn to swallow your pride, to learn to shut your mouth, and maybe even doing the skill that you've got in this job. It's a really a good environment for you to develop this skill. So you've either make that decision, okay, I am prepared to work on this, and that means you shut your mouth, you really work on your own mind, you stop trying to change her. This is the part that's difficult. In other words, it's sort of like you're playing tennis with somebody and you keep telling the other person to play better tennis. Honey, your job is to make your tennis better. That's why I find that a very powerful analogy. You're obsessed with her tennis all the time. Honey, your job is to fix your tennis so you can navigate this person and move around her and learn to develop yourself in this job. Now, if you can do this, this is brilliant, but there's no should. It's up to what you're capable of. If you're really not capable of dealing with this tennis, you have to resign. That's it. So you've got two choices, Andrew. Can you handle it? And that means not handle it like a victim, but is there something I can learn from this job? And if you're brave enough, you will certainly learn about your mind. You'll learn about your attachment, your anger, your rage, your resentment. You will, if you can do that, it'll be a brilliant job for you and you'll learn to be happy. If you can't do that, then you must go. They're the two options, honey, and you've got to make a decision. In other words, in both cases, you have to make the choice. Right? We tend to feel like victims. Oh, I know I can't change my job. There's no other job. No, and I can't change my mind. So we become paralyzed. You can do one or the other. Either way, there's no should. It's what you can handle.
Either way, it takes bravery.
What?
In either choice, it takes bravery.
Either one, it takes great bravery. And even if you do decide to leave, you don't blame her. You simply say, my tennis is not good enough. That's the really good way to put it. And then you realize, of course, she's neurotic. Join the universe, Andrew. And you're only seeing hers because you know yours.
Right, exactly.
But we keep wanting to change the other person and validating our reason for it. You can, if you can do this, is great. But honey, every time you can handle it and let her tennis show you yours and you make your own tennis better, that's the best practice in the world. But if you can't, perfectly reasonable to go. But don't blame her. Just know you're not good enough tennis. You get my point?
Yes, I do. I hear
Easy words. We all know these words, Andrew, but it's unbelievably hard, isn't it? Isn't it?
The hardest thing right now for me, period.
Exactly, that's right. So really look carefully in your mind, and then make some decisions.
This is the second time I've been with this person. I took about a decade off from her, and she came back into my life again. And so I don't want to sound romantic, but I do have the sense that karmically we have this kind of
course, it sounds like
to each other, and it's always the most difficult. It's like I'm looking in the mirror with her. It's like the worst parts of me.
That's exactly right. So this is the other point. If you feel there's something worthwhile there, try and remember more and more her good qualities. Try and remember, she's serious. She really cares. She wants the job to be better. She probably does see your good qualities. So that will help you also deal with her if you see her good qualities.
Thank you. Yes.
And if in other words, if you paint a new picture of her, it's quite profound how that can change us. If you see something different in her, which makes you more courageous,
Thank you.
One step at a time, Andrew.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, Maddie.
I have a question.
Who has a question?
I have a question.
Cynthia has a question.
Cynthia, go, Cynthia.
Okay. I have a hard time meditating. I guess this is
like darling, what do you mean by meditating? What do you literally mean by that word?
When I sit down to watch my mind.
What do you mean by watch your mind, Cynthia? What type of meditation are you describing here, sweetheart?
Exactly the ones you give to us. For example, to sit down for a few minutes, quer dizer, I do 15 to 20 minutes every day, and I sit down and I try to watch my thoughts.
So, okay, so why do you think when you say you can't, you mean you're not as good as you think you should be? But that's a fantasy, isn't it? Why can't you be content with why can't you be content with whatever you can do? Why do you assume you should be better? Why do you assume that?
Because I have a sensation that I'm getting like in a deep anxiety the moment I'm trying to watch.
Sorry, darling, start again. What happens when you start to watch your mind? What happens?
Anxiety.
Well, then you have to stop the meditation. It's very simple. Now, don't sit there for 15 minutes being anxious. That's ridiculous. It's like, if your leg is hurting and you try to ride a bike and your leg keeps hurting, you must stop. Don't be ridiculous, Cynthia. Just stop doing it. Why do you persevere? It's absurd if you can't control your mind.
And then I should do a shorter time and go back again.
Cynthia, there's no should. The whole point is all these techniques are here to help us get to understand our mind. So whatever works for you, it works. If it doesn't work, don't do it, darling. Relax.
Yeah, because during the day and during my actions during the day, I notice the benefits.
Good. Okay, then. The benefits of what?
Of this mind watching, like thought watching. I have a thought and then I'm able to listen to my thought and detect if it's real or unreal. It's just come from.
You mean during the day you can do that?
Yeah.
Well, then good enough. Relax, darling. Do other practices, like do you do the visualizing of the Buddha? Do you do mantras? Different methods. Just do different things to help your mind, sweetheart. Be very, don't be so rigid about it. It's okay. It's very hard. But also the other one is don't force it, just if you can do 3 minutes, don't do 15. That's ridiculous. Do 3 minutes. Train your mind. Just train yourself. Don't use your mind. Maybe instead of that, why don't you train yourself to focus on your breath? That's easier than the focusing on the mind. Just a breathing sensation at your nostrils. Do it for 3 minutes. Just attempt to focus your mind and stay on the breath. When your mind wanders off, you bring it back to the breath. When your mind wanders off, you bring it back to the breath. 3 minutes is a good start. Okay? Good, Cynthia. Who else is there? Maddie, what's your question, darling?
Yes, thank you, Venerable. How important is it that we set goals and expectations for ourselves? And how can we set healthy goals and expectations for ourselves?
I don't think you'd exist in your life if you didn't set a goal. If you didn't say to yourself, I must get up and go to the toilet, that's a goal. You'd pee in the bed. God almighty. Practical. Everything is intention, Maddie. Mm-hmm. The mind has many different qualities, many different states in it. There are some that are neurotic and negative, anger, attachment, jealousy. There are some that are positive, like love and compassion and intelligence. And there are some that are the mechanics. And one of the mechanics are concentration. And the key one, if you want a boss in here, that boss is called intention, not good intention, but literally volition. I will. That's the meaning of the word karma. Everything exists on the tip of the wish. You want to go to the toilet, you will not go to the toilet until your mind says it. You'll pee in your bed, I promise. If your mind doesn't say, I must stand up, okay, we've trained ourselves, we've programmed ourselves, we will stand up, but intention has to be there. It wouldn't happen otherwise. So that's setting a goal. You happen to have bigger goals called, I must get enlightened, I must do the dishes, I must go to work, I must get thin, whatever. So your goals are your intentions. And so they're the things that you want to do. So obviously you have to have those in line with good qualities, with ethics. And that's what practice means. So keep it down to earth. I mean, you can have false goals, like Cynthia's got a false goal that she should be better concentrating on her mind, and so she gets disappointed. Well, the problem isn't the goal. The problem is putting yourself down for not achieving it. So be reasonable, but also have a long-term goal, long-term view. You might be 30 pounds overweight, and you must say, I want to lose 30 pounds. But if you think you should lose 30 pounds in a day, you'll be disappointed. So have a reasonable timeline for your goals. Then you'll be in sync with your goal. And then a goal is a common sense. A goal is deciding where you're heading. A goal is like having a map. It's just common sense to have a map.
Right. That makes sense. Yes, that makes perfect sense. is that like, is the end goal the expectation that we're setting for ourselves, or should we not like worry about that?
Sorry, what? I don't understand.
The expectations that we have for ourselves or that are set for us.
You say you're going to lose 30 pounds. That's an intention and that's your goal. So where's your problem? What's the problem with that?
The expectation that's set.
What do you mean by that?
I mean by like, I have this and I have this goal and I want to achieve it by this certain time. And if I don't achieve it by this certain time, I feel like I've failed myself in some way.
Well, you might have failed yourself. So check up and then take responsibility and grow up and be a big girl and say you failed yourself. And if you didn't, if you've got a false expectation, then you're foolish. You've got to bring it down to earth, Maddie.
Perfect. Thank you,
You've got to have a goal. You've got to know it's a mile away. You've got to know how long a mile takes to run. And then you've got valid expectations. I mean, you've got to be reasonable with yourself.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, darlings. What else, people? What other questions are there? Or points to bring up, people, please? What else is there? Yes, Jennifer.
Jennifer, yes, Jennifer has a question.
Happy to see you, darling. Talk to me. Unmute, sweetheart.
Hi, sorry. I have a practice-related question in regards to Lama Zopa's method for transforming the suffering life.
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
In regards to the root guru who we're visualizing in this practice, who's my root guru? Is it one of my lamas, the lama I took refuge with?
Darling. You can have 100 different teachers, but you decide the one that you feel closest to. You decide the one that is the most meaningful for you. It can, that's your decision who your root guru is.
Can it switch every time I do it, or should it be consistent every time?
No, that's up to you. If you feel you have more than one heart lama, that's your decision. Some people can have more than one. Some people can have one. Some people can have, but the heart lama is the one that you feel the closest to, the one you think about most, the one who's, and you, by observing your own mind, you will see that. And if there's more than one, you can change. But the other one is too, also when we understand the meaning of the Buddha's mind, that's just this all-knowing, all-compassionate mind that pervades the universe, and that all these different teachers are manifestations of that same mind. So sometimes for one teaching, you might request one, you might imagine one Lama, for another one, you might imagine another, but they're all manifestations of the same Dharmakaya, but in the end, it's the one you feel closest to, and that can be more than one.
And does guru, does it have to be a lama, or can it also be a deity? Like, could I use Shakyamuni Buddha? Could I use Guru Rinpoche, or do I have to use a teacher?
Well, this is the whole discussion, isn't it? There's three different, they talk about the three different bodies of a Buddha. Don't make it complicated. There's the mind of the Buddha, which is the all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-wise, all-pervasive consciousness that is not manifest in any form at all. It's just pure unmanifest consciousness. That's the actual enlightened mind. Then there are two forms in which that mind manifests for the benefit of sentient beings. The one that we can all see is the example behind us. Here's the manifestation. That's known as the emanation body, and that's the one we can see. Most of us, that's the one of Shakyamuni Buddha 2,500 years ago, and he would have been the guru of that time. He was a human manifestation of that time, of the Buddha's mind. So as Lama Yeshe says, he's not here now, he's dead. So then our Lama in this life, our guru in this life, is the human person we have chosen to be manifesting the Buddha qualities for us now. So even if you do visualize Guru Rinpoche, even if you do visualize Shakyamuni, you would still think it's the same mind as your present guru. That makes it very personal and close. So whether it's Tara, Chenrezig, Guru Rinpoche, Vajrayogini, Shakyamuni, it's the same. Always is the mind of your Lama now, the one you feel closest to, the one who teaches you. As Lama Yeshe said, Buddha's dead now, but the Four Noble Truths will only become real for you when you hear it from the mouth of your present person. So you learn to practice seeing them as the same mind. That's where the real benefit comes, Jennifer.
Gotcha.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then thank you. And then the second body that the Buddha manifests in is the subtle one, the light body of the deity, Tara, Chenrezig. And it's only the Arya Bodhisattvas, those who've realized emptiness, they're the only ones who can cognize directly that one. But so whether we're visualizing Tara or Shakyamuni, the Nirmanakaya or the enjoyment body, it's still the same. We always try and imagine.
Encompasses everything.
Teacher's mind, Now, our present teacher's mind is oneness with Shakyamuni, is oneness with Guru Rinpoche, is oneness with Tara. That's the key to success.
Thank you.
Makes sense, Jennifer?
Yeah, it does.
Good,
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, Lou, talk to me.
I have a question about karma.
Yes.
Okay, I'm aware of the 4 R's of purification.
Yep.
But I've come across, I believe it's a mantra that says that if you look at it for so many days, that you'll be purified of major negative karma.
I understand.
And I don't understand how those two can exist at the same
No,
time.
I understand that. I bet you sound like you've been reading Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Where'd you get that from? Lama Zopa Rinpoche?
Yes.
He has found so many mantras in the sutras that nobody else has ever heard of. And they all say the same thing, Lou. So I don't know how to take it myself. Just by hearing this mantra, you'll be purified of all your negative karma for eternity. Just by hearing this mantra, you'll never be born in the lower realms. Just by seeing this mantra, you'll never blah, blah, blah. I agree with you. I don't understand it either. But all it's pointing out is if we had a mind that were that capable, it would be that way for us. So
Okay.
just have to hear it like that and just keep doing the practice. Keep doing
Well, stick to the 4 R's.
I think stick to the 4 R's, Lou.
Okay.
And add these as little bonuses every now and again, I don't know what else to say. It always seems like such a contradiction because Lama Zopa is famous for this. Okay. So keep
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, Lou. Who else is there? What else is there, people? What else is there? Anything at all? Little points to bring up? No. So maybe we should talk about the 4 R's. Because you see, the thing is, one person just recently wrote to me and said, if everything is empty of inherent existence, then how can purification work? What makes the process happen? Well, the fact is, because we hear that everything is empty of inherent existence, we tend to hear that kind of contradicts how things work. But in reality, everything works because they're dependent arisings, which means because they have no intrinsic nature. And this, of course, is hard for us to understand. So the 4 opponent powers, it's these 4 R's, and it's a really good way to remember it, There's, as I say, because everything is dependent arising, because the mind is a dependent arising, because negativity is a dependent arising, because positivity is a dependent arising, because Buddha is a dependent arising, therefore everything is empty of having an independent character. Therefore, everything works. So the 4 R's is a really easy way to remember. And they say there's no action, there's no karma, there's no seed in our mind that we have left there by thinking and doing and saying things. That's the process of creating karma. There's no seed that's still there that you can't purify. Okay, the seed is about to ripen in 1 minute, a bit late maybe, but you never know. But in general, the seeds in our mind left there by our past thoughts, actions, and words can be removed, can be enhanced, can be strengthened, or can be removed. And it's up to us. So this is where the 4 opponent powers comes in. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negativity with our mind. And so we can change it, purify it by creating positivity with our mind. Now, it's so interesting. We tend to have this feeling of this bad me that did all these bad things. And then we think you go through the process of regretting the bad things. Then you have compassion for those you've harmed. Then you have reliance on the Buddha. And then you do your mantra and you visualize purifying. And then you think, I'll never do it again. And you still think, well, that bad me is there. This is because we grasp at ourselves and at negativity as having an intrinsic nature. But it's kind of completely bizarre. It's like thinking, you've been playing the piano for the last 5 years, really practicing well, really counteracting all your mistakes and practicing beautifully, but you still keep remembering that bad thing you did 5 years ago when you played the wrong note in that concert, and you still feel guilty, like as if your 5 years of practice have made no difference. I'm still this bad person who didn't play that right note. That's how ego grasping works, and it's just completely ridiculous. It's meaningless. It's nonsense. It's just irrelevant, because this millisecond you think anything, that counteracts other things all the time. It's this constant process. So the whole point of the purification is consciously acknowledging the dumb things we've done that have harmed others, which then harm us, regretting them, which is like compassion for yourself. I did do that dumb thing. I can't believe I did that dumb thing. I can't believe I did that thing then because I didn't know any better. Whatever it might have been, killing, stealing, jumping on the, whatever it is. I did do it. You acknowledge, regrets, this brave attitude of acknowledging I did do it. And it's not guilt. One of the commonest things is we think it's guilt. We say, oh, I did this and I did that and I did this. And then we say, and I'm a bad person. This is very instinctive. It doesn't immediately go away. We've got to notice it. Or we also think regret means I shouldn't have done that. That's a meaningless statement. What do you mean you shouldn't have? That's what your mother says when she's angry. You shouldn't have done that. It's a meaningless statement. It's an absolutely useless statement because it's already happened. See, regretting is acknowledging with courage, I did do that and I didn't know any better. It was out of my own ignorance. And then the attitude is, I regret that. And this is the point, because I don't want the future suffering. Regret is literally like compassion for yourself. It's got nothing to do with compassion for others yet. It's literally compassion for yourself. And then when we cultivate that view, so much changes. You know, it's kind of brave. It's grown up. Guilt is taking no responsibility whatsoever. We love guilt. We swim in guilt. And it's very instinctive. It's a function of the root delusion, ego grasping. So we have to consciously change the concepts. And that feeling we have of I'm bad is totally, utterly useless. So regret is a powerful first step. And it's the door. It's, as Lama Zopa says, it's the first step. Without this, you can't go further. You've got to acknowledge you ate that sugar. Imagining living in denial. Oh, I didn't eat that sugar. Oh, no, it's somebody else's fault that I ate sugar. Oh, I'm a bad person because I ate sugar. These are our usual ways. We have regret. We have guilt. I'm a bad person. Anger. You're a bad person. Or denial, I didn't do it because we can't bear the pain. Three are all absurd. It's acknowledging. And then, of course, when you know that your mind goes back for countless lifetimes, you can remember the things in this life. I did do this and I did do that and I did do this. And then all the countless things you don't remember that you know you must have done in this life logically. And then everything you've ever done since beginning of this time. So that's what regret feels like. It's like, I did do this and this. And then all things I've never don't remember, I regret. And you spell it out. I regret because I do not want the future suffering. I am sick of suffering. And this, I think, this first step is the one that we find the hardest in the West, because it is showing that there's a relationship between your negative action and your future suffering. There's a relationship between the sugar that you ate and your future diabetes. And that one we don't like to think about. We just hear it as blame, as guilt. I'm a bad person. It's the worst thing, you know, it's so illogical. And it's hard for us. It's really hard for us to recognize that what we think and do and say now is literally the person we become in the future. It's very hard for us to think this. Like His Holiness says, karma is like self-creation. It's a very profound concept that we create the person we become. When we can get that, even theoretically, regret makes a lot of sense, and we're happy to do it. Because it drives emotionally this wish that I'm sick of suffering. I'm fed up with suffering. It's compassion for yourself. Nothing to do with anybody else yet. It's just yourself. The first step, regret, is for you. Then you think, well, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? And that's our relationship with the Buddha. He's our doctor. He is not our creator. Therefore, he is not our punisher or our rewarder, which is how we think of God. It's not like that at all. It's completely different. Because if I'm a good Christian, I would regret what I've done, but then I would beg God to forgive me. That's how you get purified. Well, Buddha would forgive you. He's a nice person, but that's not the point. It's like asking your doctor to forgive you for eating sugar, and then she can stop you getting diabetes. We would laugh at that. That's not her role. Buddha's the same. He's like a doctor. He gives you the methods because you heal your own diabetes. You are the one who heals yourself, not the Buddha. You rely upon the Buddha. He's your doctor. You can have the best doctor on the planet. You will adore and love your doctor, but they're the one who gives you the method and you do the work. This is incredibly important to understand. And the second part of the second step, reliance, you rely upon the Buddha. Then is the second part is now you have compassion for those you harmed. Now that comes second. But you've got to have compassion for yourself first. You have compassion for those you've harmed. And the third one is the remedy. You do, in particular practice, the visualization of Vajrasattva, the Buddha, and then the recitation of the mantra, and the imagining of the purification, imagining you're purifying every atom. So that's a question too. If I imagine I've purified every atom of negativity, why would I keep doing the same practice? Because you've got to be optimistic, And as Lama Zopa says, it's the power of your mind, which is all visualization is. Visualization is just your mind thinking something. It's the power and the confidence of that process that helps is what purifies. You've got to think about that. Something mysterious, nothing out there. You're visualizing Buddha, but it's your mind doing it. Nobody else can purify you. Nobody else can, by your friend not eating sugar, you don't stop getting by diabetes. You've got to stop eating sugar. So you've got to do regret. You've got to do the reliance. You have the compassion, and you do the remedy. And then the fourth step, you do the resolve. If you can say, I will never kill again, never lie again, if you've taken those vows, or if you haven't taken the vows, or if you can't say, I'll never badmouth my boyfriend again, that's ridiculous. Don't lie to yourself. Maybe you give yourself a timeline. This is the fourth step. Pamonka Rinpoche says this is the most important. So it's a psychological process of taking responsibility, having compassion for yourself, turning to the Buddha, your doctor, having compassion for others, doing the visualization, imagining, purifying, and vowing to change. It's a really radical psychological practice. It's your mind doing it. As Lama Yeshe says, your mind, as I said before, it's your mind that creates negativity. And so you purify it with your mind. By creating positivity. Your mind does it. That's the thing. And as Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do this every day, not to end the day with this practice. It's like sorting out cleaning up your mess, You're being your own friend. That's how I think about this practice. You're being your own friend. That's it. So if you have any questions from that, I don't know. What is there, people? And this is where it's really powerful because, with like before with Andrew's point, we all have people in our lives who we're speaking to in our head all day. The auntie, the boss, the partner. We live in our heads giving all these talks, and if only they'd listen to us. Why can't they hear this? And if only this, and if only that. We go mad. This practice is super powerful because we're dealing with ourself, looking at our own part of it, looking at our own tennis. She might have the wackiest tennis on the planet. Absolutely no problem. That's her problem. What's mine? And this is where we can really learn to make the changes in our mind. So use that same analysis that Andrew's talking about, but instead of analyzing her, analyze yourself. And that becomes powerful. And this practice helps us do that. And we become our own friend, and we give ourselves courage, because it's my mind, my tennis that I have to change. That's the key thing. Yes, Jennifer.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Dawn.
Thank you. So in regard to what Andrew said a little bit, and in regard to purification.
Yes.
And I was wondering, so you have a situation with your crazy boss or your crazy family or whatever, you do the 4 opponent powers practice, and once that practice is done, have you necessarily purified that karma, or do you have to keep going back doing that same purification for the same instance of your mistake?
Sort of it's like you got a 500-foot tree that you're trying to chop down, Jennifer. So the optimism and the confidence in the doing of that, and the way you have determination, I'm going to chop this tree down no matter what. That, of course, you won't, if you've got that powerful a mind and you realize emptiness in that meditation, then you will actually cut the root, because it's only when you realize emptiness that you finally cut the tree down. But this optimism of every day chopping away, of course, this is the same thing. You regret the abortion, regret this. But then you think, I've done this all a million times. So and you just use those examples of a reminder of the countless ones you've done. So you do it with optimism, as if as Lama Zopa says, imagine you've purified every atom. Well, of course you haven't, but you've got to like that. It's this optimistic view, and that gives your mind the courage. And as Lama Zopa says, the more strong your mind is in engaging in this practice is the degree to which you purify. So the more strong you wield that axe with enthusiasm and confidence, the deeper the cut will be in the tree. If you do it with misery, oh, there's a big tree, I'm not down, forget about it. But it's encouragement and confidence. And that's the energy that purifies. And eventually when we realize emptiness, that's when we finally purify, Jennifer.
Great, thank you.
I mean, more.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah, go.
So in regard to blame, if you have a bunch of people in your family or at your workplace and they continue to talk about you behind your back and you're a practitioner and you're doing this practice, you just keep doing this practice.
Well, honey, it's very powerful. It's really good to know the next level of, this is the most basic approach to the 4 opponent powers, the 4 steps. But then it's really powerful to remember how each of these 4 approaches specifically purifies each of the 4 ways that karma ripens. It's very powerful to know this. So the first one, regret, is amazing because there you are, you're experiencing the kind of, there are 4 main karmic results, okay? The first is the type of rebirth we get. The second karmic result is in this life our tendencies, our mental tendencies. And the third one is the one you're talking about. It's called experiences similar to the cause.
Right.
So that's when the bad things happen to us. So here, due to your past lying, people are not believing you. Due to your past disharmonious bad-mouthing, people are now bad-mouthing you. Think this way, right? So then when you do the 4 opponent powers at the end of the day, instead of if he this and if only this and why don't they believe me and it's not fair and I didn't do anything wrong, and in this life you might well not have done anything wrong, but if you have the view of karma, you know from the past life, this is now the ripening of your 57 lives ago bad mouthing of these particular people. Karma is very personal, honey. So how you bring that into your purification at the end of the day, when you think, okay, this painful thing going on, these people not believing me, let's say, you think, I regret whatever it was that I did really specifically 47 lives ago to be the cause of exactly this experience now. I regret that from the depths of my heart because look at it. I know I don't want this suffering. Well, honey, child, don't be surprised if you sincerely do that. Then have compassion for them because they're rabbiting on and they're creating negative karma. Then do the practice. Then vow never to do it again. Don't be surprised if every day you do this, suddenly at work, everything changes because you change the conditions by the purification practice itself. Each of the 4, regret purifies experiences similar to the cause. So if if somebody's lying to you, the same kind of thing, or somebody's like stolen from you, that's because of your past stealing. So you strongly regret whatever that cause was. And because this is the cause, the result it's bringing, don't be surprised it changes. Then you've got the karma called the one of intentions, and that's where the fourth one, I will never kill again. That purifies the main karma, which is the tendency to kill, the tendency to lie right now. Then the third one, where you visualize and say the mantra and visualize Vajrasattva, that purifies the lower realm karma, and then the environmental result is purified by having compassion and taking refuge. So each of the 4 steps purifies each of the 4 ways that karma ripens. It's so important to know this. And this is an extremely helpful level of detail.
Thank you.
And I think I got a feeling I sent you something to do with this when I just emailed you recently. I got a feeling I emailed you earlier today.
I'll email you about it. I heard from my other Lama
okay, don't talk
about my practice, so I'll talk to you about it.
Wonderful, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Andrew, talk to me.
Well, first, I'm new to this
okay.
4 step. Is there a way that I can read more about it and so I can adapt it step by step myself?
Absolutely, there is, Andrew, for sure. But also interestingly, I don't know what time zone you're in, but the center here, Tuktanubu Ling, leads this in 5 evenings a week at 9:15, I think. We lead a 30-minute version of this particular practice. So that might be a good start as well, just to join into that.
I'm in New York, so I think
well, that's 9, that's 11 for you, 11:15, it's up to you. But yeah. I don't know what there is here, but I can certainly send you something. So why don't you just email me and I can send you this document with teachings on this process of purification and how it works. I can happily do that if you'd like that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So email me at my full name, Robina Courtin, at mac, like the computer.com.
Okay.
At mac.com. You email me and I'll give it to you very happily.
I'll do that. Second question is having compassion for other people when it's not in your heart, really.
I know it doesn't. I know, but you've got to start with a thought first, and then it'll come into your heart eventually. I mean, when it's in your heart, that means it's deep inside you. So we've got to start with the word. So even though you can't stand your boss and you want to kill her sometimes, you've got to. The reason to have compassion for her or anybody else, especially those who've harmed us, is the point, is because they're harming themselves. And we won't have that for others, Andrew, until we have regret, which is we realize that we harm ourselves. That's why this first step of regret is like compassion for yourself, instead of beating ourselves up and having guilt and anger. That's why we have anger towards other people, because we have guilt towards ourselves. So when we realize that by what we do, we produce ourselves, this is the basis of regret, which is like compassion for yourself. Then it's easy to have compassion for another who's harmed you, because they're harming themselves. That's the whole process about karma. It takes time, but there's logic to it if we can think it through.
So there's a little fake it till you make it kind of going.
Absolutely. Oh, no question, Andrew. Everything's fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. We'll never lift a finger to do anything if it weren't fake it till you make it.
Right. Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
Absolutely. There's no question, Andrew.
Thank you. I'll email you. I appreciate that.
Okay, you do that. Good.
Okay.
So what else, people? It's time to go nearly again. The hour goes very quickly. There's Beth. Hello, sweetheart.
I was very interesting that you're talking about that other part of those fours, and I was wondering, is there any also correlation between the four opponent powers and the four noble truths and the four immeasurables? Do those?
I know there's always these many fours, but in that case,
I love the list in Buddhism.
I know, darling, I know. So there are four ways that karma ripens, and then the four opponent powers, interestingly, each of them does purify directly the four ways that karma ripens. That's certainly a relationship between those four. But I mean, there's other relationships. I mean, there's other, but not the other ones. No, not directly. Okay, thanks, Beth. Who else, people? Anybody else in there in the chat, Alexis?
No, not so far.
All right. Well, you people.
Christina has a question.
Christina, good, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Hello, Venerable Robina.
Hello.
I have a question about illness and pain. And
yes.
Sometimes I've tried to do Tonglen to kind of offer up that pain and recognize that so many others are suffering, and that pain comes from having caused harm to others in previous lifetimes. But I still struggle with wanting to get better and wanting to be relieved from that pain.
Of course, darling. I mean, these are such high practices. When you hear how the bodhisattvas talk, and you can hear that they really are joyful to have suffering, it's stupendously difficult, Christina. I mean, don't even try to pretend that it's going to make you feel happy. You know, it's so advanced, but it's unbelievably powerful, even if you can think it for a moment, you know. So, I mean, of course you want to get better. Until we're highly realized, that's not going to go away. Believe me, Christina. So, I mean, keep doing the practices, and with kind of, you know, with courage, but also do everything you possibly can to alleviate your pain if you have methods. I mean, I just can't bear the thought of living in pain. So many people live in such unbelievable pain. I can't imagine it. And the other one too is, you know, this is where it's also extremely difficult, but there's logic to it, that what we don't realize is, you know, that when bad things happen, whether it's Andrew's boss or whether it's your pain, they're both in the sense the same insofar as they are things that our attachment doesn't want. Andrew's attachment is a junkie that only wants his boss to be nice to him. Your attachment is a junkie that only wants nice feelings. This is the fundamentals of how the delusions function. Attachment is the junkie in us, and when we understand the Buddha's analysis here, it's very powerful. It's very shocking in a way, but this is why we suffer. So why the logic of a bodhisattva who does not literally suffer, because they have given up attachment, which means they've also given up ego grasping, which is the root delusion. Therefore, they've given up aversion. So why Andrew is suffering is not because his boss is mean, it's because his attachment's not getting what it wants, which gives rise to aversion. And why you're suffering is your body is causing intense, unhappy, intense feelings that cause you to have to have aversion to them. So why we're suffering is because of aversion. And why we have aversion is because we have attachment. And why we have attachment is because we have ego grasping that posits the self in the first place. This is the analysis. So the more we can do this, Christine, this is the hard work, and then we learn in the more brave attitude to learn to interpret things differently. So in exactly the same way I said to Andrew, see if you can find a new way, see if you can find good things about your boss. That'll change his mind. Now, this sounds shocking, but this is, I think, I've heard, even among the medical profession, there's all these methods now that people are using to learn to reinterpret the experience, to try and to the key one, using the Buddha's one, is to recognize that the suffering is coming because of the aversion to the pain. I mean, this is the one that's really hard to see, Christina. Do you hear me? Do you hear me, darling? This analysis.
Yes, thank you.
And by the understanding of this analysis, this gives us a way to get in there instead of seeing the pain as some absolute, and I can't even imagine having it, believe me, that if we can learn to interpret it differently, learn to see other things, this is really putting emptiness into practice. His Holiness was asked one time, how do you see everything? How do you apply emptiness in daily life? It was so simple, it was shocking. And this is to Andrew or you, the same analysis applies. He said, learn to see it from another point of view. This is so shocking. It's hard to believe it, I mean, even when you think of examples like, I remember reading about Lance Armstrong. I know he's a naughty boy now, but I remember reading this intense article about the effort that he went to, the exhausting effort he went to push himself to the limit of almost what you'd imagine is unbearable pain in order to succeed as a bike rider. So in other words, he almost enjoyed the pain because in his mind was this goal that he had. So that level of pain, if you see it as bad, it would destroy you. But he was able, I mean, I can even think if you're, we can see this kind of way, or you can even see when I did Kung Fu, for example, and you'd get incredible pain if you got punched, but you learn this discipline of responding to it in a different way. So this is the way I'm applying the wisdom side to it, Christina, interpreting things differently, seeing things differently. It's not that easy. Nothing ever is easy, but this is fitting with this analysis that we're using, which is Buddha's analysis of why we suffer. And then, of course, the view of karma, too. Of course, for both of you, the same thing. This woman's in front of him who's, just as he says, mirroring his own garbage. She's his own karmic appearance. So our pain, when anything, if we understand the law of karma really logically, if we studied it deeply, any millisecond of any experience that we would label negative is the fruit of a negative action. Of course, it's hard to hear this, but the more we apply these different things, it gives us courage. Still, I can't imagine it's like if you're living in an abusive relationship and you're locked in a prison and you can't avoid it, or like with you with pain, which you can't avoid. This is where these practices really come in intensely hard, Of course it's hard. Oh my God, of course it's hard. That's all I can say, Christina, to give you courage, darling.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable.
I admire your practice. So that's it, everybody, for today. It's a good one to stop on. So keep moving, you people, everybody. Being brave in the face of obstacles, try to learn about our own mind, our own past actions. This is Buddha's incredible point. It's so, the more we can do this, the more courage we get, the more self-confidence we get, and the more brave we become, and the more happy, therefore, we become, because we realize we're in charge of it, Thank you, dearest people. Jang Chub, Sem Chog Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam, Ke Gyo Chig, Ke Panyampa, Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne, Gong Du, Peba Shog. Maybe this bodhicitta, compassion, grow and grow in the hearts of all. May we all never give up, okay? Thank you, dearest people. Thank you, Christina, Andrew, Maddie. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Lou, Jennifer, everybody, Cynthia. Much love, everyone.